How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've enjoyed your country very much, your hospitality for the past week. It's been a very, very interesting experience. Shall we go ahead? I would like to... Mr. Bhutto, since the war of 1971, much has changed in the circumstances concerning your neighbors. India, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan have all had abrupt changes in their governmental systems. India has exploded what it calls a nuclear device. Your neighbors in the Gulf, and particularly Iran, your closest, have become much richer and more powerful. How has that affected the security position of your country, Pakistan?
Our security problems have undoubtedly been greatly affected and influenced by all the developments you mentioned. Now, you have put a whole range of countries before me, and in the general perspective, the problems have become more acute. And looking into the future, I would say that we will have to maintain our vigilance, not lose our confidence, because in such changing situations, it's essential to have a broad equilibrium, and it's not wise to get unbalanced by one development or another. Upheavals have taken place. There's chaos in many parts of the world. When we look at other parts of the world, radical changes have taken place in Europe, in Latin America, Asia, Africa. So from that general trend and tempo of developments, we are not an exception, we form a part of it. But certainly, many matters have come to a head in this region. I will first go to the subcontinent. In the subcontinent, as you said, many changes have taken place. Creation of Bangladesh, the explosion of the atomic device by India, the change of government in Afghanistan, and the more militant and aggressive attitude of President Daud towards Pakistan, the accretion of power in Iran, which we welcome because we believe that the accretion of power in Iran is a stabilizing development. Of course, there has been the oil crisis, and as a result of the Ramadan war, the energy crisis also came to a head much earlier than expected, and this a new development on the energy front has of course had its economic and political repercussions. The nations of the Persian Gulf have got now a new sense of importance, and the whole value of the Persian Gulf region has changed fundamentally. Its importance cannot be denied. It is a theatre of attention and attraction, not only to the neighboring countries, which have a valid reason to be concerned because they're neighbors, but even to outside powers and the great powers. So we are moving to fulfill our national objectives within the broad perspective of developments. And the best way really to do it is to try as much as possible to create stable conditions within the country. We have introduced democracy here. We have a constitution which has been unanimously accepted by all parties. We have embarked on economic reforms of a major nature. We have restored our relationship with the world at large. We have very good relations with the three great powers or three superpowers. With Western Europe also our relations are good. Our relations are good with the third world. And we have most cordial relations with the Middle Eastern countries as well as with Iran. Therefore, Pakistan has tried to pursue in these changing circumstances a two-pronged policy. One is of internal stability and satisfaction to the extent possible within our conditions and within our limitations within the country, to have a broad unity of the masses, and for the people at large to feel that the government is responsive to their needs. Democracy has helped, constitution has helped, reforms have helped. So that has been the internal push. Externally, we have tried to repair our relations with countries around us with whom we did not have good relations. We have consolidated our relations with those with whom we have had good relations. And so, on the whole, tempestuous situation. The ship of state is progressing to the satisfaction of the people and to the satisfaction of the government's objectives. With India, we have concluded a similar agreement. This happened 3 years ago. We have got our prisoners of war back, 90,000 of them, vacation of our territory on the Western Front, and we are going down the similar road with India, and we intend to pursue the policy of normalization.
If there's anything that surprised me in my 10-day visit to Pakistan, it's the wide feeling of continuing apprehension about India's objectives. Many of your compatriots seem to feel that India continues to represent a threat to Pakistan's security, and particularly after the explosion of the nuclear device. How do you feel about that, sir?
Well, if the past is an indicator of the future, we have to remain concerned. Since 1947, there have been 3 wars between India and Pakistan. And I don't want to go into all the gruesome details about India's outlook towards Pakistan and what India did during the Bangladesh crisis and how India intervened at that time to create Bangladesh. I would much rather not talk on those matters. You have been here for a week and you have had, I believe, presumably a fairly free discussion with people of various shades, and they must have given you a fairly good idea of the general thinking in the country. But we are not trying to exaggerate this threat. You know, there is a feeling sometimes in the United States, among some circles, that Pakistan is trying to exaggerate the threat, and that Pakistan is trying to overblow the Indian threat. It's not at all that we are trying to overblow the Indian threat. We have had 3 wars in the last 25 to 26 years, and as I said, the whole historical outlook, if it is taken into account, our fears are genuine. But at the same time, being in this position, I can't pour my heart out to you as a common citizen, because that will again muck up our relations with India. And they'll start quoting my interview with you and saying, well, I said something which was provocative, and this is contrary to the Simla agreement, and this is contrary to the spirit of Simla. So, you know, the government has scrupulously avoided to get entangled into any problem which is of India's own concern. Her recent changes in that country, we have said it, none of our business. India must find a solution to her own problems. We have tried very hard to keep on our side of the fence, without, of course, compromising our vital national interests. And their vital national interests, when I talk of them, principally it is the future of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. However, the point is that we don't want to pursue any policy of provocation.
Have you put those aside for the time being?
We have not put it aside in the sense that we have forgotten it. We cannot forget it. But we have included that in the Simla agreement, that we will negotiate with India at the appropriate time on the future of Jammu and Kashmir. But we made it very clear to India that when we say we will negotiate with India on Jammu and Kashmir, we have said we'll do it within the framework of the principle of self-determination. And we believe that at the appropriate time, we're quite prepared to enter into negotiations with India on the future of Jammu and Kashmir.
India doesn't seem to foresee any appropriate time, however, does she?
No, but you know, time changes. Many changes have taken place. Already the map of the subcontinent has changed. These events have their objective bearing as well. And it does not lie always in the control of men or women to master the destiny of people and to suppress the fundamental urge of people who want to assert and ascertain their rights. So from that point of view, we are quite patient, and we believe that there's no hurry to try and excite or try to create tension or try to rake up a problem which will have only negative effects. Of course, we can always run to the United Nations, but what has that taught us? We went to the United Nations In the past, there are resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir, there are vetoes on Jammu and Kashmir. So, with patience and with internal consolidation, with the progress of the country, we are quite prepared to have negotiations and discussions on this matter.
What is your feeling about the necessity for achieving nuclear parity with India?
This is a very sensitive question, and of course, our policy is that we do not believe in proliferation of nuclear weapons, and all our efforts are to have a nuclear program exclusively for peaceful purposes.
That's what India said too.
I said it's a very sensitive question.
Is yours at approximately the same level of peacefulness as India's?
Look, I tell you, even if I was trying to evade the issue and to try and give you a diplomatic answer, let us be a little more frank. Suppose the intentions were different, and I were to, in my ignorance, tell you that we are determined to explode the nuclear device. That's all very well. I can make a chauvinistic statement of that nature. But you know very well that the great powers and the nuclear powers have put the screw on this matter very much so since India exploded the atomic bomb. There have been some fundamental changes in the French policy after the Martinique meeting between President Ford and President Giscard d'Estaing. And Canada's policy has changed very much. Whenever we try to seek nuclear technology or nuclear equipment, the safeguards that are suggested now are so watertight that it's going to be very difficult for a non-nuclear state to be able to make progress in the explosion of a nuclear device. Now, this is the factual position, and you know it very well. There have been very big changes in the policies of these countries. Canada's, as I said, French policy has changed, German policy has changed. You see the agreements that have been concluded between France and South Korea recently, and you also see the efforts that Canada is making to revise her treaties and agreements with India on this matter. And they're trying, the Canadians are also trying to revise their treaties and agreements with us, that we will ensure that there are cast iron safeguards and that none of this technology will be used even by the country itself after acquisition of that technology to build reactors or reprocessing plants. So it has now become much more difficult after the Indian explosion for non-nuclear powers to acquire nuclear capability of the kind you are thinking of, even if a non-nuclear power were to make that attempt. So I was not trying to be smart with you when I told you that we are trying our best to make progress for the nuclear in the nuclear field for peaceful purposes. Because even if the intentions were to have a nuclear device, the nuclear powers and the semi-nuclear powers are determined to see that this doesn't happen. Now, how far they succeed and how far they don't succeed, that's a different matter. But I have to take into account all these factors, and I cannot make a statement to you that, well, come what may, irrespective of these new developments, we are going to go ahead and attain nuclear parity with India, because the objective conditions have changed very much.
How important do you see the hand of the Soviet Union in the activities now of your two neighbors, Afghanistan and India?
They have very good relations. The Soviet Union has excellent relations, most cordial relations with India and Afghanistan. And
are they provocative relations as you see them?
Great powers now have learned not to have provocative relations. In the 50s and the 60s, there were sort of provocative policies, but now the whole scenery has changed. And great powers don't pursue their policies crudely. They have a sophistication about it. Now, when I say that the Soviet Union has excellent relations with Afghanistan and with India, this does not mean that we do not want good relations or very good relations with the Soviet Union. As far as we are concerned, we would like to have the same level of relationship that the Soviet Union has with India and Afghanistan. There is no contradiction at all for Soviet Union to have very good relations with Afghanistan and India, and also for Pakistan and the Soviet Union to have very good relations. As a matter of fact, I have made 2 visits to Moscow since the dismemberment of my country. One was in 72, and the other one was last year in 74. And the last visit was, I would say, a most useful visit. And the joint communique that emerged from that visit has been a valuable joint communique. So I feel that there is room for improvement of our relations with the Soviet Union, and that we can have a stable situation.
Let me put it more frankly, because I hear it over and over again from many of your countrymen. You do feel threatened by this historical thrust, which does not seem to be abandoned on the part of the Soviet Union to reach the warm waters of the Indian Ocean, and perhaps in contemporary circumstances get a little closer to that oil reservoir over to your west.
I will not speculate on these matters. I will not be a professor talking about these questions, because foreign policy has 2 angles. One is that those who are not saddled with the responsibility of conducting relations with states and trying to improve relations with states. My job is to try to improve relations with states and to repair damages, as I said earlier, and to minimize or to obviate if there are any tensions or threats. So, speaking as the Prime Minister of the country, I can't enter into that kind of a discussion.
What is the meaning in strategic terms of your rapprochement with China? Does that have significance?
Well, with China we have very good relations. With China we have had excellent relations from the time we recognized China. That was in January 1950, about a few months after their liberation of the mainland. And these relations have developed, and now they are of a permanent nature in terms of very good mutual relations. At the time when the United States relations with China were bad, we maintained good relations with China. When India's relations with China were bad, we maintained good relations with China. Now there is a Sino-Soviet dispute. This does not mean that we cannot have good relations with China and the Soviet Union.
Does the new wealth of Iran change your orientation? Pakistan has a great deal to offer the Gulf states, and I know you are making a big contribution in terms of manpower and brain power, and are counting very heavily on receiving subsidies in return. You visited Iran just, I think, the day before yesterday. Can you describe how you see your future in terms of your Islamic neighbors nearby in the Gulf?
Yes. Of course, with Iran, again, we have had long and traditional friendship and fraternity. This was much before the recent developments, and we continue to develop these relations most satisfactorily. So also, we have undoubtedly developed very good relations with the Persian Gulf states and with the other countries of the Middle East. These countries are our neighbors, and there is the requirement of our manpower. But this requirement of the manpower is not based on any quid pro quo, that we give you the manpower and in return you must give us subsidies. We haven't received excessive subsidies, from the Persian Gulf states. I'll be quite candid with you. Of course, from Iran, and we have received a substantial amount of economic assistance. But from the Persian Gulf states, I'm not trying to be ungrateful. We haven't received all that much. We have got some assistance from United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, last year, but not this year. And we have had assistance from Saudi Arabia. It does not form part of the Persian Gulf, but from Saudi Arabia we have received economic loans for projects, and we hope to increase this development. Also from Libya we received some assistance. But our problem is that with the increase of the oil bill and with the general international situation, the economic situation, with either recession or inflation, God knows where we stand. Sometimes it's an inflationary situation, sometimes we're in a recession, then we get back to a near inflationary situation. We go round and round the mulberry bush. But the thing is that the value of our exports has gone down very much. Now, only 2 years ago we were paying $70 million for our POL requirements. Now we will have to, after this recent decision in OPEC, $400 million. $400 million is a very big jump from $70 million. And then we are paying about $300 odd million in rescheduling of debts. The value of our exports has fallen. Rice is now selling at half the price it was selling last year. And we will lose about $100 million on the decrease in the price of rice in the international market. Then, as you know very well, there is a crisis in the textile industry. And we have had quite a serious problem in selling our cloth, yarn, textiles. So we have a serious balance of payments position. And therefore, the assistance we gets eaten up to a large extent by our balance of payments.
Why have you, as one of the more powerful countries, not joined with your brothers of the Third World to persuade the oil-rich countries that this is really doing you far more damage than it is the Western industrial countries? I have traveled around quite a lot and seen how much damage it's doing to the poor countries, and the rich countries are surviving really reasonably well.
The rich countries have overcome the problem, really. I would say that the rich countries have taken the shock, the initial shock, and now they have absorbed the shock. And now the point is more of a political tug of war and tussle, and it's more a problem of trying to get an international equilibrium advantageous. Every country tries to do that.
And the poor countries are being decimated.
So the point is, as far as the Western countries are concerned, they have absorbed the shock. Now, as far as we are concerned, as a non-oil producing country, you have seen the situation here, and you say that you have seen the situation in other parts of the Third World. But to us, you might not agree with me, and you might think that this is absolutely absurd. Believe me, in the long run, for us, the unity of the Third World is more important than the very serious economic problems we are facing today. The unity of the Third World is important because today there is an oil cartel, and the oil cartel might be criticized not only in the Western world but also in some of the Third World countries. However, it sets a trend. If it had not been for the increase in the oil prices, the world would not have been shaken up like this. That something has to be done to change the present international economic situation, the terms of economic relationship between the North and the South. It's no longer a question of the ideological factors. It's now a polarization of the North and the South, the rich and the poor. Now here, I tell you that I first became a minister in 1958, and I was Minister for Commerce. And I remember that since those days, we've been debating and talking about the terms of trade and about the fluctuation in the prices of primary commodities, but it's been water over a duck's back. I remember first having spoken to Hammarskjöld about it when I went to the United Nations, and he said, well, what can we do? After all, this is the reality, this is the position. And so nothing was really done to feel that there is an urgent necessity for a change. Now, this necessity is being felt as a result of the oil crisis or the energy crisis. Everyone feels that we must get down to making some adjustments, some changes. Proposals are coming forward. For the first time, concrete proposals are coming out. Mr. Monaheim spoke in the United Nations in the special session. Now, the speech of Mr. Monaheim, some people have said it's constructive, it's positive, it's good, it's a harbinger for a new order. Others have said, well, no, it's disappointing. However, before the oil crisis, I don't think such speeches could have been made.
That perhaps is true, but when you say the unity of the Third World is so important, you now have two Third Worlds, and it seems to me that a unity of the poor countries perhaps is important, but the new economic order is now the oil-rich countries against the industrial-rich countries, and you poor fellows are being left out in the cold. And maintaining a unity is really a facade for it seems to me, it's unclear to me how it serves your purposes.
No, I don't think that the oil countries can ignore the position of the rest of the Third World countries. It is not possible for them. They are enlightened enough to understand
But you yourself have said you're getting very little aid from your third world, from your oil-rich brothers.
Because I do. As I said, at the same time, I said I don't want to sound ungrateful.
No.
But we are getting aid. However, we are stuck with a very fundamental problem. But you see, their policies have not crystallized yet. It came quite suddenly, and apart from Iran and perhaps Saudi Arabia, the others did not have the infrastructure or the establishment to be able to make institutional arrangements. They were suddenly landed with this oil wealth, and they were in a way trying to find their bearings, because suddenly a huge problem arose and they were being pulled in different directions. There was a threat from the West, in the sense that it was said that, well, we can't tolerate an increase in the oil prices, we might have to take some action. Then on the other hand, the third world countries, the rest of them, they were aghast, and everyone queued up and wanted something out of the kitty. Now, even the United States, after the Second World War, a great power and a superpower after the Second World War, when you first propounded the Truman Doctrine, it was all hazy and nebulous, Then when you talked about martial aid, what a long debate there was in the United States itself. Well, martial aid, how will it be done? How will it work? How will we be able to bring about the institutions? Then the creation of the World Bank itself took time.
So you're saying you think that there still remains some hope that there will be a new equilibrium in which wealth perhaps will be spread more evenly, not only between industrial and non-industrial, but oil and non-oil countries?
Most certainly the oil-producing countries are aware of the urgent necessity of finding out some systematic procedures to be able to see that we are not left high and dry. Because, being left high and dry means chaos, means trouble, means instability, means revolution, means the world going berserk. And they don't want things like that to happen. It's not in their interest, because they can't be isolated from this whole phenomenon. And therefore, I'm sure that with time, with a little bit of effort, we have to be a little patient, because not even, as I said about this special session, well, it was only a beginning. Again, there will be another session in Paris in December, between the oil-producing countries and the consumer countries, and one or two of the third world who are non-producing countries. But that's not going to be the last conference. Then they are talking about the UNCTAD conference in Nairobi. And if the oil-producing countries and the Western countries, although now, as you yourself have said, well, the adjustments have more or less fallen into place, but even they are now trying to see what is a permanent formula. Now, if that is the position, certainly it will take some time for the oil-producing countries to devise ways and means which will bring about a systematic formula for assistance to the third world. Because how can they seek isolation? They will be then certainly isolated from the rest of the third world, and that will not be good for their bargaining position with the Western countries either. We don't want to be isolated as well, because the Western countries and the oil-producing countries, when they meet, sometimes it is suggested to the oil-producing countries, what the hell you bothered about the others? You think of yourself. So you see,
as they say in the United States, they'll cry all the way to the bank.
Yeah. Well, the dialogue should be between us and you. Forget them. There are cynical schools of thought that, well, the only answer to Bangladesh is to let millions of people perish. So then the question is that if we are going to take that kind of an approach, then we are going to get ourselves all divided. And this division is not good, not only for the third world, but it's not good even for the general situation.
But I must say, the poor countries, particularly the poor Islamic countries, the African countries are beginning to talk up a little bit more, have certainly not let it be publicly known the magnitude of your distress. And it seems to me that the oil-rich countries have not yet been embarrassed by the distress that they have caused some of their fellow third world members.
I would not entirely agree with that, because in our discussions with them,
private.
Yes, I would say that they're fully cognizant of the ramifications.
But publicly you have been very faithful to not to say a word of criticism.
But I'm not criticizing even now.
No, I know.
I'm not criticizing even now. But this is not private either. When the mic is off, that's different. But this is not private either. And we will faithfully maintain that position because we say that that is good not only for the third world countries, but that's good for a general overall solution as well.
Let me move away from that a little bit. Within recent months, the United States, after long last, has removed the last restrictions, I believe, of the arms embargo. Are you in a position financially or militarily now to take any advantage of that?
Well, we have moved a great distance from the old position.